Hey guys, it's Pickles, and welcome to another winter's day, unfortunately. I've had the M135i now for just over 18 months now, I think, actually. And I wanted to do a bit of an owner's update in terms of, how it's been over that time, the experience I've had in terms of, how good it's been, and the things that have not been quite so good. So one of the first things I wanted to talk about, and I guess one of the main reasons that people buy this car, is performance. It's got a fair amount of power, it's got a relatively large engine in the front of a relatively small car. It's a standard sized family hatchback, but with a big 3-litre inline 6 shoved in the front. So it's kind of a recipe for good fun with the rear wheel drive as well. And over the last 18 months, I can say that that's exactly what it's been. It's been good fun, it's been entertaining. With the weather getting like it is now, it's even more entertaining. The back end likes to skip out a little bit. I think my tyres are on the border of having to be replaced fairly soon, so that's probably not helping. It does make it a little bit more fun, a bit more lively though. I've not had any hairy, scary instances yet, but yeah, touch wood. So the performance is great. It's still more than enough for me. Sorry, first and foremost, I think it's been a very reliable car, and just not from my own experience, being on forums and things, I see that they're a pretty reliable car. My car has, however, been back into BMW 4 or 5 times. So some of the things it's gone back for are to do with rattles from here. And anyone that has one of these cars can attest to that. It is quite rattly. I think it's because of what they've done to the standard 1 Series, making the suspension stiffer, these kinds of things, has just made it a little bit less refined, in my opinion. It is also the most basic BMW you can buy, so what can you expect? I don't know. But for a £30,000 car, I think it should have been a bit more solid. Interestingly enough, actually, I picked the car up from BMW yesterday because, I don't know if you'll be able to hear it, but I've got a fairly persistent rattle coming from the passenger's door card. And me being me, I'm finding it horrendously irritating. They have actually had a look at this, and it turns out that some of the welding behind on the door card is actually gone. So it is a genuine issue, a genuine thing that does need fixing. So they've ordered a new part, the whole new door card, and they've also ordered a new armrest because there is a rattle coming from here as well. So, I mean, two things on that. First and foremost, it's a bit of a shame that these things have gone wrong, but the reality is I couldn't be more pleased with BMW for fixing these. So I bought the car from BMW Cooper in Reading, and I've been going back to them ever since, and they couldn't really have been any better with me. One of the biggest things that I have had done to this car, in terms of warranty repairs, by the way, it's all been covered by warranty, is they actually replaced the turbo on this car. Now, this wasn't due to a fault with the turbo, it wasn't blowing, there wasn't any boost leak, pressure leak, anything like this. It was due to the metallic clinking noise that quite often a lot of people get, but it was diagnosed as coming from the turbo gasket. So they decided to replace the turbo at a cost of a couple of £1,000s to them. So yeah, thank you BMW. The only downside is it still does it. So reliability wise, in terms of actual issues, virtually none. I had to top up with a litre of oil once, and that was on a relatively long drive through Europe. Got off the ferry in France, got into Belgium, and the light came up and I had to pay 25 euros for a litre of oil. But hey, these things happen. So great, reliable car so far, couldn't really fault it. And also, as I say, couldn't fault the service from BMW. Cooper and Reading, they've been perfect. Go and check them out. I'm not getting paid or any kind of recognition for this, but still, go check them out. So, economy. The M135i driver's least favourite topic. When purchasing this car, I believe it was said that it could probably manage about 35 mpg average. Now, my average across the time I've had this car, I think, is actually approaching 25-26 mpg, which to some of you may be absolutely ridiculously good. To most of you might seem very low. It can do good mpg. Last night I did a fairly slow drive back because I had dogs in the car, and I managed to do 30-32 mpg. I've done a 50-60 mile drive, mostly motorway, and I managed to maintain 35 mpg. And I did a fairly eco run from the UK down to Dover, over across all the way up to Amsterdam. and I managed to do, I think it came in a 35, 36 mpg across that whole journey, which was incredible, to be fair. I mean, I was trying to conserve fuel because it was already expensive enough as it is without the added fuel cost, but that was really impressive, and I mean, that was great because it saved loads of money, and it was still, you know, going adequate speed, let's put it. There's actually a police car right in front of me right now. However, on my standard commute to work, which is these sorts of roads, fairly twisty, fun back B roads at about 12-13 miles, I struggle to average 22-24 mpg, and that's with a sort of 2 or 3 4 mile stretch of A road as well. So it's not great for that, but I think for the performance you're getting and the fun that you have, it's good enough. Overall, for what I expected from it, it's not been bad at all, and I couldn't really complain about it. Practicality. So one of the reasons that I bought the 5-door and I bought this shape of car rather than the 2 Series is because I don't know why. I always think for some reason that it's best to have 5 doors because you never know when you're going to have more people in the car. My brain thinks too practically, it's a bit boring, but I have to say that the car's been great for what it has. There's not that often times that I have people in the back and etc, etc, but when you do, it's nice not to have to get out of the car and put the seat down, that kind of thing. So glad I got the 5-door in that respect. And then in terms of choosing the 1 Series over the 2 Series, well, again, as I said to you before, I'm quite cheap. The 2 Series is more expensive. I actually personally prefer the front the design of the 1 Series anyway, but that's just me. I'm sure that a lot of people will say I'm crazy. But this car has been very, very practical. With the seats folded down, the boot space is enormous, it really is. Obviously it's not as high as some of the competitors, the Golf, the Audi, that kind of thing, but yesterday, for example, we went and did a bit of a bumper shop at IKEA. I know, how boring, but I had about 250 kilograms worth of different boxes, flat pack furniture, malarkey in the car, and it coped no problem. That, to me, is very useful because, you know, the other car we have is nowhere near as practical, so it's nice to have one of the cars which we can do that for. And if it's mine, it means we get to drive my car more often. I get to drive my car more often because it's also the more practical one. Okay, the MPG is not great, but it's more practical. So as an all-round package, it's really, really good for that. So for me, it's been great for the practicality side of things. I don't have kids. I don't have kid seats in the back, so unfortunately I can't really comment on that. I know that some people found it fine, some people don't. I also, however, am, as I've mentioned before, very short. I'm only about 5'6", 5'7" on a good day with this hair, but because of that, it means there's absolutely plenty of room behind me, and you know, with me in a comfortable position, 6'2", 6'3" people can sit behind me, that's okay. But for a normal height person, or even a tall person, it probably would be a little bit claustrophobic, let's put it that way. So if you're like me, if you're below 5'10", 5'9", then you're going to get on with this car great. Just don't have lots of tall friends. The future plans for the car, well, it's difficult to actually know for sure. I always have plans and things that I want to do. Ever since doing my video with Blowsy back in the day, I've admired his splitter and, you know, the various different pieces that he had. Just subtle changes which make the car look a little bit more aggressive. I thought about getting some lowering springs just to drop the heights maybe 20 mil. And one of the most common things that comes up, and one of the most things that I keep thinking of, is a tuning box of sorts. Most recently, been speaking to the guys at Blue Spark, and they do a relatively basic tuning box, a bit like the JB Plus, for any of you guys who know that. And it would offer, I think, increases of maybe 20, 30, if you're lucky, 40 bhp on this car, which is a relatively good increase, you know, 10% increase on over standard. But my problem is, at the moment, is right now, especially with the weather the way it is, there's not really any point in increasing the power, because it's just all going to the rear wheels. And as I said before, with the tyres not being full treaded, let's say, it does get a little bit dicey already. So I'm kind of in two minds as to whether that's a worthwhile purchase at this point in time. So what would I change? What would I have changed if I could respec this car? Well, since I've had it, I've always said that due to sort of some of the commuting I was doing when I first had the car, I think I probably would have preferred to have the auto box. These days, however, I'm enjoying the manual because of the commute I'm doing. Again, is much more, you know, country roads. It's more fun to have the manual box. It's not an issue, but it still would be a consideration if I was to come around and respec the car. Other than that, certain things that I would change are the stereo system. Now, this is probably going to be going back on myself now, because I'm pretty sure back in one of my original videos I did say that the stereo system was good enough, and it is to a degree. But with just 6 speakers, with 2 in these doors, mids, halfway down the door cards, 2 sub-type speakers underneath the front seats, and then 2 in the rear parcel shelf, and this is the basic audio system, it's not enough. There's not enough volume. Part of my commute is down a fairly rough A road, and I have to have the volume at over 3/4 just to sort of get it to where I want. There's not really any distortion, but there's just not really a lot behind it. There's not really much highs, lows, or even mids, so it's a bit of just a washed out system. Now, I have heard as well that the premium system, or even the Harman Kardon system, doesn't really make a huge great deal of difference, because the soundstage in this car is not great anyway. But I think it probably would have been enough of a change for me to make it a bit more worthwhile. So that's something I would 100% change next time round. One other thing would be the comfort pack. So I think I was a little bit misinformed when I was purchasing the car. My fault, also their fault at the time as well. One of the only things that actually they did wrong. And I didn't want to believe maybe that the car didn't come with cruise control and sensors as standard, because it's so common these days. But of course, being BMW, you have to pay for those extras because this is just their baby BMW. So that's one thing I really miss. I didn't spec the comfort pack. I have no parking sensors at all, and I have no cruise control. I possibly would even go for the full, you know, front and rear sensors rather than just the rear ones as well, just because it's nice to be able to sort of be lazy, I guess. So what's next after this car? Well, nothing for a while. This car is on a 4-year PCP with BMW, and interestingly, they did actually call me up about 4 months ago to say that at present my car was about equal in terms of the value remaining on it versus the finance value, which I'm still a little bit unsure of at the moment. I believe that they were actually just doing it to try and get me into one of their diesel deals, which didn't really fly with me. But even if I were able to change out of this car, it's so hard to find something that is an equal or an increase on this. I have actually been to various garages and looked at things, because I like to keep my options open, and also I'm impatient and I get bored very easily. I was at Jaguar fairly recently looking at the XE. I've also looked, as I've been to BMW, I've looked at things like the 335i, or 340i, sorry, and also the 440i and the 440i Grand Coupe, because they offer sort of similar levels of practicality, etc. But for the price you pay as a premium, it's just not worth it. Which has led to me to things like Mercedes, looking at the C43 AMG, and the pricing on that is insane. They just don't offer the same levels of discount as BMW. This car is about £330 a month for me for that car, which actually is relative in terms of performance and power, etc. You're looking at £650 or more a month, and there's no way it's worth double this. So it's an interesting one. It's always quite tricky, because it's actually such a good value proposition in this car that finding something that replaces it is always going to be very, very difficult. And I think that really sort of sums this car up for me, is that even for me, for someone who gets relatively bored of cars quite quickly, each time I take this car out for a drive, each time I go have some fun down the country roads, it brings it back to me and makes me think, yeah, this car works, this is what I need, and it covers all of my bases. And because of that, I'm sure I'll keep coming back to it. So I hope that was useful for you. As always, I'm really interested to hear your comments on this, what I've said, what your thoughts are in a similar matter. And as always, if you like the video, please like it and comment, and also subscribe to my channel.